wasn't like that, Obina said quickly. I fell in love with you, Ada, truly. It wasn't just about a son. Don't lie, Ada shouted, her hands balled into fists. You courted me. You married me under false pretenses. You got me pregnant. All while another woman in Enugu thought she was the only Mrs. Waneri. How can you stand there and talk about love? Her throat burned with restrained sobs. Obina's eyes brimmed with tears now. I love you. I did love you. I love both of you in different ways. Adeze Waneri hummed softly as she prepared dinner in her Abuja home, the rich aroma of egusi soup filling the kitchen. Her day had been ordinary. She had navigated the bustle of Wuse market for fresh vegetables, greeted neighbors with the familiar "Good afternoon, ma," and fetched her children from school. As twilight settled, Adeze, known as Ada to her friends, set the table for her family of 4, unaware that her world was about to shatter. Her husband, Obina, was away on one of his frequent business trips to Enugu, a nearby city. Such trips were common in his line of work as a civil engineer, and Ada had long accepted them as part of their comfortable life. Tonight, however, an uneasy feeling tugged at her, a whisper of intuition she couldn't quite name. After tucking in her children, 7-year-old Nnamdi and 4-year-old Amara, Ada settled into bed with her phone in hand. She scrolled through social media absent-mindedly, pausing on a friend's post about an old classmate's wedding. The photo showed a radiant bride in Igbo traditional attire, the groom feeding her a piece of kola nut amid cheers. Ada smiled, remembering her own small-cut wedding to Obina 8 years ago in Abuja. It had been a modest celebration, just a handful of colleagues and friends as witnesses. Obina had said his family lived far in the village and couldn't attend on short notice, a detail that had saddened Ada then, though she quickly brushed it aside in her love-struck happiness. Now, that memory flickered back with a twinge of doubt. Why had she never met Obina's parents or siblings in all these years of marriage? She always had a plausible reason. They were elderly, or unwell, or simply traditional, folks who didn't travel much. Ada had accepted those explanations, trusting the man she loved. Her thoughts were interrupted by the trio of Obina's second phone vibrating on the nightstand. He had left it charging at home, a rare occurrence, as he usually carried both his personal and work phones along. Ada glanced at the screen, expecting to see Obina's name or an office colleague. Instead, the caller ID displayed an unknown number from the Enugu area code. Curious and mildly concerned, she answered softly, "Hello, Obina's phone. Who is speaking, please?" For a moment, only silence answered. Then a timid child's voice came through. "Daddy?" Ada's heart skipped. "Daddy, it's me. Are you coming home tomorrow? Mommy said I should say good night." The room began to spin. Ada sat up, pulse racing. "Daddy? Mommy?" She struggled to keep her voice steady. This isn't your daddy. Where is he?" she managed. In the background, she heard a woman's gentle voice, prompt. "Give me the phone." The child murmured, "Okay, mommy." Now, a new voice came on, an adult woman's voice, cautious and confused. "Who is this? Why do you have my husband's phone?" Ada's breath caught in her throat. My husband's phone. For a few seconds, she could not find her voice. The shock rooted her to the bed. The silence on the line was finally broken by the other woman's anxious tone. "Hello? Obina, is that you?" Obina. The name of her husband on a stranger's lips snapped Ada back. She hung up, hands trembling so violently that the phone clattered to the floor. In the darkness of the bedroom, illuminated only by the soft glow of the bedside lamp, Ada felt the walls closing in. That had clearly been a child addressing Obinna as father and a woman claiming to be his wife. A whirlwind of half-formed explanations swelled in her mind. Maybe it's a misunderstanding, a case of mistaken identity, or a cruel prank. Ada wanted to deny what she had just heard. Obinna was a loving husband to her, a doting father to her kids. He couldn't simply have another family, not Obinna, who called her Nkem, my own, when he held her on quiet Abuja night, not the man who rushed home from trips with ube, pear, and odala star apple treats from the east because he knew how much she missed the taste of Igbo land. Yet, the evidence was in that innocent child's voice echoing in her ear, "Daddy, are you coming home tomorrow?" Ada's chest tightened as she pieced together the clues she had overlooked. Obinna's frequent trips, his evasiveness about introducing her to extended family, the way he sometimes hesitated before answering simple questions about his past. She remembered an instance last Christmas. He had insisted she and the kids visit her own parents in Lagos while he claimed he had urgent work in his hometown. He returned acting distant and guilty. At the time, she had assumed it was work stress or perhaps that he felt bad to miss the holidays with them. Now, she saw those moments in a frightening new light. Tears blurred Ada's vision. She paced the room in panic, one hand pressed to her forehead. In her mind, a truth was forming that she dared not speak aloud. Her husband was living a double life. Obinna has another wife and children. Ada clasped her hand over her mouth to stifle a sob, mindful of the children sleeping in the next room. The pain slicing through her was sharper than any betrayal she could imagine. How long? Who is she? How many children? Questions flooded her, but one loomed largest. Why? Memories crashed into her, one after another. She recalled her late aunt Ngozi's ominous warning at her wedding. Make sure you know everything about the man you marry, Ada. Today's men, chai. Auntie Ngozi had hinted at infidelity and polygamy, but Ada had laughed it off. After all, polygamy was something of the past, a relic her grandmother's generation accepted. Or so she thought. In traditional Igbo culture, having multiple wives was once seen as a man's right if he could provide for them. But Ada had believed those days were over for educated couples like her and Obinna. They had married for love, exchanging vows of faithfulness. He promised it would be just us. Ada sank onto the bed, wrapping her arms around herself. She felt cold, despite the warm Abuja night. The quiet of the house pressed in. Only the faint sway of the ceiling fan and the distant chirp of cricket kept her company as she grappled with his new reality. A wave of anger cut through her despair. She thought of the other woman on the phone, the assertive tone when she said, "My husband's phone." How many times had that woman waited for Obinna to return home? How many lies had he told to shuttle between two lives? Ada's fist clenched. She needed answers. She needed the truth. Without fully realizing it, Ada found herself riffling through Obinna's nightstand drawers with unsteady hands. Among his papers and gadgets, she uncovered an envelope tucked at the very back. Inside were photographs. The first one showed Obinna grinning, arm around a woman Ada had never seen. Slim, dark-skinned, beautiful, and unmistakably Igbo in her dressing. She looked a few years older than Ada, wearing a pale blue George wrapper and blouse, the style of traditional attire for events. Next to them in the photo stood two girls, teenagers perhaps, and in Obinna's arms a toddler boy. Ada's heart pounded painfully. The smiling boy in Obinna's arms had the same dimpled cheeks as Nnamdi. The woman held a baby girl, It was clearly a family portrait, taken in front of a house that looked like one of those new duplexes in Enugu or perhaps Onitsha. In that single instant, Ada's last hope of misunderstanding crumbled. Here was proof, a whole other family. Obina's arm rested around that woman's waist in the exact casual way he held Ada in their own family photos. Ada could barely breathe. She pressed the photo to her chest, tears streaming down her face. The weight of deceit in that image was crushing. 15 years of marriage, she wondered, guessing the older girl's age. They looked about 14 or 15 and maybe 12, only a little younger than the length of time she had known Obina. So, he's been with that woman since before me. Realization struck like a thunderbolt. She might be the other woman in her own marriage. The thoughts made her stomach lurch. Ada had assumed this entire time that if Obina was unfaithful, it would be some mistress on the side, some fling. Never had she imagined he might have another wife with children older than her own. Her lips trembled as she whispered to the empty room, "So, I am the secret." The idea that she was the secret wife and not the only wife sent a fresh surge of humiliation through her. Outside, the Abuja power supply hiccuped and the light flickered. NEPA was doing its thing. The brief outage snapped Ada out of her spiral. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, gritting her teeth in determination. Enough! She needed to hear this from Obina's own mouth. It was well past midnight, but she dialed his number with shaking fingers. Of course, it went straight to voicemail. Likely he had realized she had answered his other phone and now had it switched off, anticipating her rage. That only confirmed his guilt. Ada didn't leave a message. Instead, she texted him a single line. "We need to talk. I know everything." Then she deleted the text and retyped it, unwilling to give him the advantage of warning. Finally, she sent nothing at all. Let him come home unsuspecting. She would confront him face to face. Ada spent the rest of that sleepless night, alternating between heartbreak and fury. She sat by her children's beds, watching them sleep, and her tears of betrayal turned to tears of protectiveness. How dare Obina put their young ones in this position? How dare he build a life on lies that could hurt these innocent children? 4-year-old Amara stared in her sleep. Perhaps, sensing her mother's distress, even in dreams, gently Ada stroked the girl's forehead, whispering a prayer. "Chineke, give me strength, please, Lord." In those dark hours, Ada made a silent vow. Come morning, as soon as Obina returned from Enugu, she would get the truth out of him. No more lies, no more secrets. The sun would not set again on this day without answers. And if her worst fears were confirmed, that she was not the only Mrs. Nwaneri, then heaven help Obina. Because every piece of her dad's shattered heart would demand an explanation. Obina Nwaneri arrived at his Abuja home the next afternoon, oblivious to the tempest awaiting him. He walked through the door with a weariness in his eyes and a briefcase in hand, greeting, "I'm home." His voice echoed with forced cheer. Usually, the kids would barrel down the hallway at the sound of their father's arrival, but today, the house was still. Ada had sent the children next door to a neighbor's flat to play, ensuring they wouldn't witness the fight that was about to erupt. Obina stepped into the living room and found Ada seated on the sofa, back ramrod straight. On the coffee table before her lay the incriminating photographs and his second phone. Ada's face was pale but resolved, her eyes swollen from the night tears. The moment Obina saw the items laid out, he halted mid-stride. The color drained from his face, and his confident husbandly smile faltered. In that charged silence, the truth hung heavy between them. Ada, he began, voice low and tentative. Don't. Ada's voice lashed through the air, cold, unfamiliar even to herself. She stood slowly, every inch the dignified Igbo wives holding wrath in check. Before you say anything, just don't. Not lies. Not this time. Her hand trembled as she pointed to the photo of Obinna with the other woman and children. What is the meaning of this? Obinna opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked like a cornered animal, eyes darting as if seeking escape. Ada realized with a bitter pang that she had never seen her husband look frightened before. He was always self-assured, the problem solver, the man in control. Now his world was crumbling as surely as hers. She picked up the photograph and shook it, her voice rising. Who are there, Obinna? The truth, I beg you. Is that your other family? Another wife? How long have you been deceiving me? The controlled tone she had intended gave way to hot, fractured anger. 8 years, Obinna. 8 years I lived as your wife. Bore your children, thinking I was the only one. Were you married to her first? Answer me. Obinna flinched at each accusation. Adeze, please, I can explain, he pleaded, stepping forward with palms raised. Ada left out a sharp, merciless laugh. Explain? Explain? Her voice cracked. Chimo, there is nothing that explains this. Tears threatening to fall again, but she blinked them back furiously. She did not want to cry. She wanted to hear him say it. Obinna's eyes glistened as he finally found his voice. It's not what you think, he murmured. It's exactly what I think, Ada spat. She held up the phone next. Your daughter. Her daughter called last night. I spoke to her. And to your other wife. The words tasted bitter. Obinna recoiled as if slapped. Clearly he had hoped to break the news on his own terms, not knowing the call had blown his cover. Yes, that's right, Ada continued, stepping closer to him. I talked to her. She asked who was holding her husband's phone. The memory of that call filled her rage anew. Imagine my embarrassment. She didn't even know about me, did she? Ada's voice quivered. Just like I didn't know about her. Obinna's shoulders sagged. In a barely audible voice, he said, her name is Ijoma. Ijoma is my wife, my first wife. Ada felt the room tilt. First wife, the confirmation, spoken aloud, still hit her like a blow to the chest. She had braced for it, yet hearing those words made her knees buckle. She steadied herself on the sofa arm. A strangled sound escaped her lips, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Obinna reached toward her, desperation in his face. Ada, I'm sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this. She shrank back from his touch as if it burned. Don't you dare touch me. Her eyes flashed. So it's true. You have another wife and children. How many, Obinna? How many are they? He swallowed hard. 2 daughters with Ijoma and a son and another daughter with her too, right? I saw the baby in the photo. Ada was breathless, on the verge of hysteria. Obinna shook his head quickly. No, the little boy in that photo, that's Chinedu. He's my nephew. He closed his eyes, pained. I lied to you, even in pictures. The boy is my cousin's son. He was just visiting. I don't have a son with Ijoma, only 2 daughters. The baby in her arms is her second girl. Ada's brow furrowed. Anger, giving way to confusion. Only daughters? She searched Obinna's face for truth. His admission opened a new door of understanding. No son in that household. Is that why? Obinna ran a hand over his face, ashamed. Our daughters are Adobe, and she's 15 now, and Oluchi 12. I married Ijoma 16 years ago. back in the village. His words came haltingly. Ada, you have to understand. My family, my mother especially, she was desperate for a grandson. When year after year, we only had girls, the pressure was immense. He looked away, voice thick. In our culture, a man is often expected to have a male child to carry on the family name. My mother, she insisted I take another wife to get an heir. I resisted. I swear I did, but he met Ada's eyes. Then, I met you. Ada's heart pounded. She felt a mix of anger and a sick sort of pity. So I was what? Your solution? She said quietly. A broodmare to give you a son? Her voice wavered with hurt. No, it wasn't like that, Obina said quickly. I fell in love with you, Ada, truly. It wasn't just about a son. Don't lie, Ada shouted, her hands balled into fists. You courted me. You married me under false pretenses. You got me pregnant. All while another woman in Enugu thought she was the only Mrs. Waneri. How can you stand there and talk about love? Her throat burned with restrained sobs. Obina's eyes brimmed with tears now. I love you. I did love you. I love both of you in different ways. He paced, agitated. I know it sounds selfish, but I was selfish. I wanted you, Ada. I couldn't let you go. And yes, a part of me knew you could give me a son. Ada let out a sharp cry of disgust, covering her ears. This was too much. She had heard of Igbo men taking second wives for a male heir, stories told in hushed tones and gossip, but she never imagined her modern, educated husband would succumb to that mentality. Polygamy might be accepted in our culture, but deceit never is, she thought bitterly. How long did you think you could keep this up? Ada snapped. Did you plan to keep us both forever, living a lie? Or were you eventually going to discard one of us? Obina looked stricken. I never wanted to hurt either of you. I was trying to keep everyone happy. My mother, my people back home. They knew about you and Nnamdi. They pressured me to eventually bring my son into the family openly. He paused, voice cracking. Ijoma didn't know. She suspected I was hiding something, but I never told her outright. She's a good woman. She didn't deserve this either. Ada's nails dug into her palms so hard it hurt. Hearing Ijoma described as a good woman by her husband was a special agony. So, only your mother and some family knew. They all conspired in this lie? Ada felt sick. The betrayal extended beyond Obina. Some of his relatives had smiled in her face. On the rare occasions, she spoke to them on phone, all the while knowing she was just the other wife. Outside, thunder rumbled. A sudden Abuja rainstorm was brewing. Wind rattling the window panes. It was as if the elements themselves seated with the turmoil inside that living room. Ada's voice dropped to a deadly calm, the kind that precedes a breaking point. Obina, you have ruined everything. You realize that? You talk about keeping everyone happy. Well, look at us now. She swept her hand in a wide gesture. Is anyone happy? Two families that can never be the same. Children who will grow up with this scandal. She even think of them? He hung his head. I was going to tell you, both of you. I was looking for the right time, a way to make it right. I never wanted it to explode like this. Ada gave a bitter smile, tears spilling freely now. There is no right time to discover your entire marriage is built on lies, Obina. No painless way to learn you are just part of your husband's double life. Her chest heaved. God, I trusted you, Obina. I defended you whenever anyone joked that men can't be trusted. Do you know how foolish I feel? She stepped closer, holding his gaze with steely resolve. You made me the secret, Obina. Do you know what that did to me when I realized? Her voice dropped to a whisper. I thought she was the mistress. But no, I am. The shame of that, it's unbearable. Ada choked on a sob and drew back, wiping her face. Obina reached out again, tears rolling down his cheeks. Adeze, Biko, please I beg you, forgive me. He was openly crying. I have been a coward. I didn't know how to untangle what I had done. You are never just a mistress to me. You are my wife, my love, the mother of my son and daughter. Please believe that. Ada's anger wavered as raw pain took over. She had never seen Obina cry. The sight of it twisted her insides with conflicting emotions. She ached to both strike him and to collapse in his arms, to let him soothe the hurt he caused. But how could he soothe this? Who even was this man she married? As the rain began to pound on the roof, Ada suddenly felt exhausted. Every part of her was drained by the tidal wave of the last 24 hours. Her silence hung heavy. Obina cautiously stepped forward, and this time she didn't back away. Gently, he placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. She shook with sobs as the fight bled out of her. Why, Obina? Why did you do this to us? She wept. We were happy, or at least I was. Obina pulled her into a desperate embrace. At first she resisted, weakly pounding his chest, but then she clung to his shirt, both of them sinking to their knees on the rug. They stayed like that for a moment, entwined in grief and regret, the rain drumming above. Over his shoulder, Ada's eyes fell on the photograph still on the table. The other family staring back at her. She pulled away, fresh anger surging. She couldn't allow herself the comfort of his arms. Not now. I'm sorry, Obina kept murmuring. I'm so sorry. Ada wiped her tears and stood. Her voice turned cold again. Sorry isn't enough. We have to deal with this. With them. She pointed at the photo. What happens now, Obina? You have 2 wives and 2 sets of children. Do you intend to openly be a polygamist now? Shall we all live together under one roof like some twisted extended family? Her sarcasm was laced with bitterness. In Igbo tradition, men who could afford it sometimes get polygamous households, but typically it was open, not shrouded in deceit. The reality of such arrangements was often conflict among the wives, a fact not lost on Ada even in her anguish. Obina shook his head. I never wanted that. I didn't think that far. He trailed off, running a hand over his head. We'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. I just need time to set things right. Ada let out a short laugh. Time? You think time will fix this? You have had years, Obina, and look what you did with it. She crossed her arms, steeling herself. No, you are going to set things right now. Ijoma deserves to know the truth. I want to speak with her. Obina's eyes widened. Ada, no, please. Let me talk to her first. She should be devastated. I need to handle it carefully. Ada stood. Even now, he was protecting the other woman from hurt. A consideration he hadn't given Ada. Carefully? She snapped. Like how you carefully handle telling me? Obina hung his head, at a loss. The rain outside intensified. Wind gushed, making the trees outside whip and sway. A loud thud of thunder rattled the windows, underscoring the tension in the room. In that charged moment, something shifted in Obina's expression. He looked at Ada, not just with guilt, but with palpable fear. His skin, which had been flushed moments before, now appeared ashen. Ada realized he was sweating despite the cold breeze that began to blow through the slightly open window. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came. Instead, his hand fluttered to his chest. Ada, he managed softly, his breath coming in shallow pants. Ada's anger gave way to concern. What is it? She asked wearily. Obina's eyes were unfocused, one hand clutching his chest, the other grasping the edge of the sofa for support. I don't feel. Obina's knees buckled. For a split second, Ada thought this was some ploy for sympathy, but then his face contorted in real pain. He gasped, trying to suck in air, and crumpled to the floor. Obina! Ada screamed. rushing to his side. He was collapsing, his full weight sagging against her. She eased him to lie flat, her hands shaking uncontrollably. His eyes rolled upward and his lips were turning an alarming shade of blue. Obinna, stay with me. Stay with me. Look at me. Look at me, Obinna, she cried, patting his cheek. His chest heaved as he fought for breath. Ada, I'm so, he rasped, but the sentence choked off. His body jerked once violently. Ada's heart plunged into icy panic. She fumbled for her phone in her pocket. Thank God it was there. With slippery fingers, she dialed the emergency number. No service. This useless network. She dashed to the front door and screamed into the rainy afternoon, "Help! Somebody help me!" Neighbors quickly responded. Within minutes, 2 men from next door raced in, and a small crowd gathered on the veranda. Despite the downpour, they helped carry Obinna's limp form to a car. Ada barely registered the chaotic blur of the drive to the hospital through sheets of rain. She clutched Obinna's hand in the back seat, feeling it clammy and frighteningly still. "Hang on, please hang on," she whispered over and over, tears mingling with rainwater dripping from her hair. At the hospital, lights harsh and corridors echoing, nurses and doctors sprang into action. They wheeled Obinna away on Gurney, leaving Ada soaked and shivering in the waiting area. She realized with a start that she was barefoot. She had run out of the house without shoes. None of it seemed to matter now. She stood there, arms wrapped around herself, praying fervently. "God, please, save my husband, Biko Chukwu." She didn't care about the lies or betrayal in that moment. She just wanted him alive and well. They could sort out the rest later. Just let him be okay. But 20 minutes later, a solemn-faced doctor emerged. One look and Ada knew. She shook her head in denial, backing away, but the words stopped her. The doctor's words came gently, as though they were any way to cushion the blow. "Madam, I'm very sorry. Your husband, he didn't make it. It appears he's suffered a massive heart attack. There was nothing we could do by the time he arrived." Ada slid to the floor, a wail escaping her that seemed to come from the depth of her soul. "No, no, no!" she moaned, rocking herself as nurses tried to help her up. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. Not now. Obinna was gone, just when the truth had come to light, just when 1,000 questions still remained unanswered. The shock of it was too cruel. He had died before he could explain everything, before he could even fully beg for forgiveness. In the brightness of the hospital corridor, Ada felt her world splinter into pieces. She was now a widow and a betrayed wife all at once. And somewhere not far, another woman was about to learn she was a widow too. A woman who didn't even know Ada existed. Fresh tears poured down Ada's face as she imagined Ijoma, the first wife, receiving this news. How would she react? Would she curse Obinna for his deceit or simply mourn the man she thought she knew? And their daughters, Adobe and Oluchi, what of them? Ada pressed a hand to her mouth, stiffing a sob. Her own children would never see their father again. Little Namdi, who adored his daddy, who was always waiting at the door with toy for daddy to play. Baby Amara, who giggled in Obinna's lap during bedtime stories. How would Ada tell them that Papa would never come home again? The weight of that task crushed her. Neighbors who had followed to the hospital tried to console Ada, but their words barely penetrated her grief. She vaguely recognized her friend and neighbor, Ngozi Okafor, wrapping a dry shawl around her shoulders. Ngozi gently led Ada to a seat. "Ndo, Ozugo, sorry, it is okay," she murmured in Igbo, eyes wet. "It is well, Ada, take heart." But Ada's heart was broken in so many pieces, she wondered if it would ever be whole. As thunder rumbled outside and rain continued to lash the hospital windows, Ada realized this was only the beginning of her ordeal. Obinna's death was an ending for him. But for her and for Ijoma, this was the start of a painful journey. She would have to pick up the fragments he left behind and somehow make sense of them. She would have to uncover the truth on her own. Through her tears, Ada whispered to herself, a bitter echo of the doctor's words, there was nothing we could do. Those words rang in her ears, heavy with finality. Obinna was gone, taking with him the chance for explanations or apologies. All that remained now were the secrets he left behind, and two families that would never be the same. The days following Obinna's death passed in a blur for Adeze. Shock can be mercifully numbing, and in Ada's case, it carried her through the immediate necessities, identifying his body, filling the death certificate, receiving mourners who flocked to her home once the news spread. In Nigeria, death is never a private affair. Community and family will come, whether to console or to pry. And in Ada's case, there was plenty for the gossips to pry into. From the moment she returned from the hospital, neighbors and church members filled her living room, wailing loudly in the customary show of grief. Women from her parish Christian mothers group arrived with flasks of hot pepper soup, believed to revive the faint, though Ada had no appetite. The men sat outside under a hastily erected canopy, speaking in low tones about how young and healthy Obinna had seemed. Some quietly speculating that maybe spiritual attack or stress had failed him. Ada had snippets as if underwater. She drifted through these days in a daze, performing expected rituals, nodding mechanically at condolences, kneeling for prayers, and hosting relatives she had never met who suddenly appeared at her door. On the second day, Obinna's older brother Chike arrived from their hometown in Anambra State. He brought with him their aged mother, Nneka, a stern-faced woman with the same high cheekbones as Obinna. Ada had only spoken to Mama Nneka on the phone a handful of times. The woman had always sounded distant. Now, meeting her in person for the first time at such a moment was surreal. They entered the living room, where Ada sat in black mourning attire, Amara curled in her lap, and Nnamdi leaning against her. Nnamdi was still in shock, quiet and withdrawn. He was old enough to know something awful had happened, but he couldn't fully grasp the permanence of it. Amara, too young to understand that, mostly clung to her mother because everyone else crying frightened her. When Mama Nneka saw the children, she let out a piercing cry and fell to the floor, rolling and sobbing in the Igbo way. My son, Obinna mo, who did this to my son? Chike and others helped her up and into a chair. Ada felt her own eyes sting at the raw pain in the old woman's voice. Despite the betrayal she had suffered, Ada's heart had a place for this grieving mother who lost her son. Gently, Ada passed Amara to a neighbor and went to kneel before her mother-in-law. Nne, Ndo, sorry for your loss, she whispered, offering the customary condolence. Mama Nneka's cry ceased abruptly as her reddened eyes fixated on Ada. The older woman's gaze flickered over Ada's shoulder to where Nnamdi now sat, small. Ada saw something like recognition, or was it relief, flash in Mama's eyes. Is that my grandson? She asked in a hushed tone. Yes, Mama, Ada replied cautiously. This is Nnamdi, your son's son, and this, she motioned to the little girl sucking her thumb in the neighbor's arms, is Amara, your granddaughter. Mama Nneka beckoned Nnamdi closer. The boy stepped forward timidly. To Ada's surprise, Mama managed a sad, proud smile through her tears. She cupped Nnamdi's chin, examining his face. Odika Nnaya, he looks so much like his father, she murmured, slipping into Igbo. My son's carbon copy. She pulled the boy into a tight embrace. Nnamdi stood stiffly at first, then allowed himself to be hugged, perhaps recognizing his grandmother from photos his father had shown him. Ada watched, a lump forming in her throat. In that moment, Mama Nneka's acceptance of her grandson was clear. Family blood was family blood. Ada hoped it meant she and her children would not be cast aside, even when the full truth of Obinna's two marriages came out. Chike cleared his throat, drawing Ada's attention. He was a tall, imposing man who seemed to be a few years older than Obinna. His expression was unreadable. Adeze, he said formally, "Disike, be strong. We have many things to discuss." Ada nodded and motioned for him to sit. He remained standing. The room had emptied a bit as most neighbors tactfully left to give immediate family space. Only a few close friends like Ngozi lingered quietly in a corner for support. Chige got straight to the point. "My brother will be buried in our hometown, per our custom. We have come to arrange the transport of his body and the burial plans." The tone was businesslike. "We will need the death certificate and any document of his, as well as information about his assets here in Abuja." Ada felt uneasy but tried to maintain composure. "Of course, we can arrange all that," she said. She had managed to collect Obinna's death certificate from the hospital that morning and had begun looking into his bank account and paperwork. That task was how she had discovered another wave of shocking truths. Almost everything was in Obinna's name only, and some assets she assumed they co-owned were also his. It was as if he had been preparing for a possibility of complications. Mama Neka dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. "Also," she said quietly, "have you been in contact with Utijoma and the girls?" The question hung in the air. Ada's stomach twisted. So Mama knew everything. Likely, she had been the mastermind pushing Obinna all along to produce a male heir. In that moment, seeing the grief in the older woman's face and her genuine affection toward Nnamdi, Ada felt a conflicted mix of anger and empathy. Mama had lost her son. Ada couldn't bring herself to confront her about the family secret right now. "I haven't spoken to Ijoma yet," Ada replied carefully. I don't have her contact." This was true. Obinna's second phone was locked now, and she haven't tried calling that unknown number again since the confrontation. "Have you told her?" Chike shifted, exchanging a glance with his mother. Mama Neka sighed heavily. "We informed Ijoma of Obinna's passing yesterday," she said. "She and her children, they are devastated. She wanted to come to Abuja immediately, but I told her to stay back until we have the body taken home." Mama's voice trembled on the word body. She paused to compose herself. "She doesn't know about you yet, Adeze, not from me." An uneasy silence fell. The implication was clear. Ijoma had learned she was widowed, but she still did not know that her husband had a second wife and additional children. Ada realized the family had kept that secret even in the face of Obinna's death. Perhaps they feared it would add to the chaos and pain. Or perhaps Mama Neka still felt some shame or reluctance to have it all come out publicly. Ada swallowed hard. She was not sure whether to feel grateful or offended. On one hand, being introduced as the other wife at such a time would indeed cause a scene. On the other hand, what was their plan? To smuggle the body to the village, bury Obinna, and hope the two sets of mourners never cross paths? That seemed impossible. Sooner or later, Ijoma would learn of Ada and vice versa. And what about rights? If Ijoma was the legally recognized wife, which Ada strongly suspected, she had found a church marriage certificate in Obinna's document dated 16 years ago. Then, Ijoma might have priority in burial decisions. Yet here they were, including Ada in plans, which meant the family at least acknowledged her as a wife too. Chike cleared his throat again. Adeze, "I know this is delicate. My mother and I, we agreed to handle things step by step. First, we take Obinna home and give him a proper burial. All this," he gestured between Ada and his mother, implying the complicated situation, "can be discussed after. We don't want any ugly drama at the funeral. Do you understand?" His tone was measured, but Ada felt the sting in his words. Ugly drama. He was talking about any confrontation between her and Ijoma. They wanted to avoid a scandal back home. It dawned on Ada that she could be seen as the source of that drama. She, the secret wife, the outsider in their eyes. The realization made her draw herself up. "I understand wanting to keep things peaceful," she said, voice steady, "but I will not be erased. Brother Chike, I have a right to mourn my husband too. So do my children." She looked him in the eye. "We will attend Obinna's burial in the village. I want to meet Ijoma and her daughters, not to cause trouble, but because we all deserve the truth now. Ada's tone was firm. There was no room for negotiation in it. Mama neck aside, closing her eyes as if pained by the inevitable of confrontation. But she nodded. You are right, Adeze. The truth must come out. Bobia, listen. Emotions will be high. Our people, they will judge. We must handle it carefully, so no one does anything rash. There was an unstated warning in her voice. Igbo burial ceremonies often involve the extended family elders, the Umunna and Umada, the male and female kin groups. If provoked, some over-serious relatives could, in the worst case, try to bar a strange woman from the funeral or cause a scene. There were tales of co-wives fighting at graveside or families denying a second wife the right to speak or be recognized. Ada didn't want a spectacle, but she also would not quietly stay away. I understand, Mama, Ada replied softly. I have no wish to fight. I just want closure for all of us. Mama Neka reached out and surprisingly took Ada's hand. Her old wrinkled fingers squeezed with surprising strength. Ndo, Mwam, my daughter, she said quietly, I am sorry for the pain this situation has caused you. Her eyes were mournful. Perhaps in her heart, she regretted pushing her son into a second marriage, seeing now the havoc it's brought. Or maybe she was simply sorry that everything had turned out this way. Either way, Ada felt a flicker of empathy. This woman had lost her child. There was no greater pain for a mother. And yet, here she was, trying to hold together the pieces of Obina's fractured families. Later that evening, after the initial flurry of visitors died down and Mama and Chike had retired to the guest room to rest, Ada found a quiet moment for herself. The kids were finally asleep, tucked in by Auntie Ngozi, who had been a godsend to childcare through the chaos. The house was dim and calm. Ada sank into an armchair on the now empty living room. Her eyes landed on a framed photo on the shelf, a picture of her, Obina, and their kids at Millennium Park last year. They all looked so happy, sunlit and smiling, oblivious. Ada felt tears prick her eyes. How could life change so drastically in a matter of days? She thought about Obina's two daughters in Enugu, Adobe and Oluchi. He had said, teenagers who had lost their father. They must be heartbroken, she thought, remembering how she had seen Obina call them occasionally, using hushed tones as if speaking to relatives. Those phone calls he had dismissed as my cousin's kids wanting school fees were likely his own girls. Now, it made sense how frequently those calls came. Her heart ached, imagining the girls crying for their papa. And Ijoma, the first wife, Ada tried to picture her not as the other woman, but as a person, a wife who likely had no clue her husband had found someone else. How did one process grief and betrayal simultaneously, as Ada herself knew too well? Did Ijoma have support around her? Perhaps her own family or close friends. Did she resent Ada already, or had they shielded her from that for now? A soft knock on the front door snapped Ada out of her thoughts. It was almost 9 p.m., unusual for visitors. She wiped her face and went to open. It was Pastor Chike, a different Chike, not her brother-in-law, but her church pastor, who shared the common Igbo name. The kindly middle-aged man stepped in, umbrella dripping from the earlier rain, offering condolences and gentle prayers. After a short scripture reading and words of encouragement, he lowered his voice, looking at Ada with concern. Sister Adeze, he said, I have been made aware there are complications regarding Obina's personal life. He likely had whispers of a second family. News travel fast in close-knit communities. Ada looked down, embarrassed. The pastor continued tactfully. I only bring it up to advise you as your spiritual leader. Handle this with grace. People will talk, but God's wisdom must guide you. No matter what anyone says, remember you and your children are not at fault here. Neither is the older woman and her children. The fault lies with our departed brother. May the Lord rest his soul. He sighed. We must all try to act with forgiveness and love, especially for the sake of the children. Ada nodded, tears gathering around. Yes, Pastor, she murmured. It's just so hard. He patted her shoulder kindly. I know, my dear. It's an unimaginable trial. But you are a strong woman. The Lord will see you through. When you go for the burial, go with a clean heart. Mourn your husband and let the truth reveal itself calmly. Do not let anyone push you into anger or bitterness. Time will heal and the Lord will fight for you and your kids. His words soothed her frayed nerves a bit. After he prayed for strength and departed, Ada sat quietly absorbing his counsel, forgiveness and love. How was she to find those in her heart right now? But he was right about one thing. Neither she nor Ijoma created this mess. They were both victims of Obinna's choices. The victims in these cases are always twin. The women and the children left behind. She recalled reading somewhere, both families were suffering now because of one man's deceit. It wasn't fair to turn on each other. Clutching her rosary, Ada whispered a prayer for strength to face the coming days. She thought of her children's future and of those other two girls who were now, by blood, her children's half-sisters. A part of her, perhaps, a part that was a mother above all else, resolved that whatever happened, she would make sure all of Obinna's children got what they deserved. Love, care, and a father's legacy, however tarnished it might be. And she finally drifted into a light sleep in that armchair. Ada dreamt of her husband. He was standing between two houses, one hand reaching to each. He looked torn, conflicted. She tried to run to him, but in the way of dreams, the distance only stretched. She called his name. He turned to her with sorrowful eyes and mounted something she couldn't hear, then faded away like mist. Ada jolted awake, heart pounding. It was the dead of night. For a moment, she expected Obinna to be beside her and the nightmare would be over. But reality sat heavy in the quiet. He was gone. Nothing would ever be the same. Yet, morning would come, and with it, the journey to Anambra for the burial. The journey to meet the other half of her husband's life. Ada rose and went to check on her sleeping children. She stroked Nnamdi's cheek, and he stared slightly, murmuring in his dream. Ada hoped he was dreaming of happier times with his father. Pressing a kiss to his forehead, she whispered, I will make this right for you, my son, I promise. In that moment, she steeled herself. She would face whatever awaited in Anambra with her head high. She owed that to her children and to herself. The truth was out, and she would see it through to the end. The sun had barely risen when two vans departed Abuja, heading southeast towards Enugu. In the first van rode Obinna's coffin, transported by a funeral service along with his brother Chike and a few other male relatives. The second van carried Adaeze and her children, Mama Nneka and two of Ada's close friends, Ngozi and another neighbor, who insisted on accompanying her for moral support. As the convoy joined the long expanse of the Enugu-Abuja highway, the mood was somber and tense. Mama Nneka quietly fingered her rosary in the back seat beside Nnamdi, occasionally pulling the boy close to mutter a blessing on him. Little Amara slept fitfully in Ngozi's lap, while Ada stared out the window, heart pounding with anticipation and dread. Mile after mile, the landscape changed from the rocky hills of the Middle Belt terrain to the lush greenery of Igbo land. Ada watched the countryside pass by the blur of village and farms, but her mind was miles ahead, already in Enugu City, imagining the meeting that awaited. How do you greet another widow who only discovers you exist on the day you both bury the man you each called husband? How could Ijoma look at her? With hatred, with pity? Would the girls refuse to acknowledge new half-siblings in their shock and grief? As they passed Enugu and headed to Anambra, Mama Nneka cleared her throat. Adaeze, she said, when we arrive, my compound will be full of people. The Umunna, kinsmen, and Omada, daughters of the family lineage, have been preparing since yesterday. They will expect to see Obinna's immediate family. She paused, choosing words carefully. You will be introduced along with your children. Ada nodded slowly. She understood the subtext. This was how the truth would be revealed to the wider family and community. Traditionally, at Igbo funerals, The bereaved wife and children are presented. Here, there were two wives to present. The thought made Ada's stomach twist, but she must endure it. We will do it properly, Mama continued. We'll say Obina married you in Abuja some years ago. They may be murmuring, but nobody will disrespect you openly, not under my watch. The old woman's tone was firm. Despite everything, Mama Neka was marshalling her authority to shield Ada from disgrace, and Ada was grateful for that mercy. It was late afternoon by the time they arrived at the Nwaneri family hometown on the outskirts of Anambra State. The compound was sizable, a bungalow with a courtyard shaded by a giant mango tree and a few smaller outbuildings. Already dozens of people were gathered under canopies, relatives, villagers, church members singing hymns as is customary when a body is brought home. As the van with the coffin pulled in, wails erupted from the women present. A few ran towards the vehicle crying Obina's name. Ada stepped out of her van and with shaky legs. Immediately, curious eyes fell upon her and the children. She had whispers of who are they ripple through some of the onlookers. Her hands trembled, but she straightened her back and held Nnamdi's hand firmly, balancing Amara on her hip. Ngozi and the other friend flanked her supportively. Mama Neka went ahead to join the elders by the coffin, which was being lifted out by pallbearers. Before Ada could gather herself, a cry rang out from the veranda of the house. Obinamo, my husband! Ada turned toward the sound and saw a woman stumble out of the doorway, supported by two other women. It had to be Ijoma. Even in grief, she was striking, tall, with elegant features, wrapped in a white mourning cloth. Her face was contorted in pain and tears as she reached toward the coffin. Two teenage girls trailed behind her, both crying openly. She was clutching a framed photo of Obina. The sight of them made Ada's eyes fill. Those must be Adobe and Oluchi. Ijoma nearly collapsed against the coffin, sobbing, until relatives gently pried her away, so the pallbearers could set it on a stand under the canopy. Oh, she wailed, knees giving way until a female relative caught her. My husband, why? Her grief was raw, unfiltered, and it tore through the air. Ada felt an overwhelming urge to run to her, to hold her up, but she froze, uncertain of her place. Then, as if sensing something, Ijoma's gaze lifted and met Ada's across the yard. Their eyes locked. One widow recognizing another, confusion knitted Ijoma's brow. Through her tears, she looked at the unfamiliar woman in black, holding two small children. Perhaps there was a fleeting moment of intuition, because her anguished expression shifted to one of shock and dawning realization. Ada's heart thundered in her chest. This was it. The moment truth would turn fully. A murmur rose among the crowd. People were noticing the silent exchange. Mama Neka stepped forward, raising her voice over the mournful singing. Umunnem no umunnam, my brothers and sisters. Please, Genonti, listen. The crowd quieted somewhat with a steady authority. The old woman announced, Today we will mourn my son, Obina Nwaneri. As we prepare to bury him, we must also acknowledge all that he left behind. She beckoned to Ijoma, who was now standing stiffly, clutching her daughters on either side. Here is his wife from our town, Ijoma, with her daughters, Adobe and Oluchi. The onlookers nodded sympathetically. Many already knew them. Ijoma's eyes never left Ada. Even as tears kept streaming down her face, she looked like she wanted answers, but decorum kept her silent for the moment. Mama Neka then gestured for Ada to come. Time seemed to slow as Ada moved toward with Nnamdi and Amara. She felt hundreds of eyes on her. She kept her chin up even as her inside churned. Standing a few feet from Ijoma now, she could see the first wife's face clearly, drawn with grief, yes, but also flickering with disbelief and betrayal as she regarded Ada and the children. Up close, Ijoma was indeed a few years older than Ada, maybe in her late 30s. She had the look of a woman who had carried burdens, a small scar above her brow, perhaps from an old accident, and faint lines around her eyes. Lines I might have too one day, had life been kinder, Ada thought absently. Mama Nneka's voice rang out again, though gentler now. This here is Adeze, who lives in Abuja. She's also Obina's wife, and these are also his children. A collective gasp rustled through the attendees. Some women covered their mouths, and men exchanged stunned glances. The worst kept secret in the immediate family was now news to the entire community. Polygamy might be accepted in Igbo culture historically, but such a revelation still caused a stir, especially since none outside the immediate family seemed aware. Ada dared not to look directly at Ijoma's face during that announcement. She kept her eyes lowered, focusing on steadying a now awake Amara on her hip. Nnamdi squeezed her other hand tightly. He was intimidated by the crowd and upset by the crying. Ada squeezed back to reassure him. One of the elders, a grey-haired man with a walking stick, stepped forward with a frown. Nnewaneri, he addressed Mama Nneka. What is all this? Another wife? Why were we not informed? His tone carried reproach. Others murmured in agreement. Mama Nneka inclined her hand. It is true we did not inform everyone. We only just resolved to bring everything into the open now. My son made his mistakes in secrecy, but in that, all has to come to light. She looked between Ijoma and Ada with sadness. We ask for understanding and peace. Both of these women are mourning their husband. Both families are our blood. Her voice trembled slightly at that last word, revealing her own inner turmoil. A stern-faced woman in the crowd, likely one of the Omada, the married daughters of the lineage, known to be frank arbiters in family matters, stepped up and placed a hand on Ijoma's shoulder. Nne, do you hear this? Did you know? She asked Ijoma bluntly in Igbo. Ijoma had, until now, stayed silent, shock freezing her, while at the question, her composure cracked. I know him. I did not know. She cried out, voice sharp with hurt. She turned to Mama Nneka, anger and agony flashing in her eyes. Mama, you knew? You knew and you let me live in the dark? Chai, what evil is this? Fresh tears poured down her face. Her daughters clung to her, confused and crying too, perhaps more at their mother's distress than understanding the revelation. The elder with the stick tapped it on the ground for attention. This is indeed a complicated matter, he said gravely. But today, let peace reign. We are here to bury Obina with dignity. The quarrels can wait. He cast a stern look at the gathered family members, essentially forbidding any immediate outburst. Ijoma nodded, though her chest was heaving. She wiped her face with a corner of her wrapper, clearly struggling to rein her emotions. Ada finally mustered the courage to look directly at her. Their eyes met, and Ada's lips parted, wanting to say something, anything, perhaps to apologize, to explain that she too had been deceived. Or how does one communicate such things in front of a crowd? In the end, no words came, only a silent exchange of sorrow and empathy, and a mirror of pain. In Ijoma's eyes, Ada saw not an enemy, but a woman shattered, much like her. She hoped Ijoma could see the same in hers. The moment was broken by the practicalities of the funeral. The officiating priest had arrived and was calling everyone to prayer. Ada stepped back, retreating to one side with her children and friends, while Ijoma and her daughters remained on the other side of the coffin. The service began, a blur of scripture readings and hymns that washed over Ada without fully registering. She kneeled when others kneeled, stood when they stood, mounting the prayers automatically. Her mind, however, kept drifting to the scene that would follow after the burial, the inevitable confrontation or conversation with Ijoma. When it came time for final tributes, both wives were expected to speak. Ijoma went first, supported by her brother and a friend on the other side. She managed to walk up to the casket, She spoke in Igbo, addressing Obina's lifeless form through her tears. Obim, who will call me Wanyoma, good woman again? Who will help me discipline these girls when they become stubborn teenagers? You promised you will see Adobe enter uni together. Now, you will not be there. Why did you do this to me? Her voice broke and a wail rose from some women in the crowd in response. Obina, you betrayed me! Ijoma suddenly cried out, switching to English in her anguish as she glanced back toward Ada. You lied to me, and you lied to all of us. Sobs racked her. The other women rushed to hold her, murmuring to her to focus on the farewell, not the anger, at least not now. It took a few minutes for her to compose herself. Finally, in a strained whisper, she ended, May God forgive you, and may your soul find rest, because those of us you left behind, what you have done to us, Chineke gekpe, God will judge you. There was an audible gasp at her bold words, but no one could blame her. She staggered back, and her daughters guided her to the seat, themselves crying softly. Now all eyes turned to Ada. She fell rooted to the ground. Her friend Ngozi gently nudged her, giving an encouraging nod. With laden legs, Ada approached the coffin. Her reflection glinted on the polished wood. And she had the sorry thought that she hadn't even seen Obina's face one last time. Custom dictated the coffin remained mostly closed due to the travel. She wished she could see him, even just to confirm he was truly there, and this wasn't all a nightmare. But the lid was shut, with only a small glass panel showing a glimpse of his peaceful face. Ada peered through, and her composure nearly dissolved. He looked as if asleep, not as if the whole world hadn't crumpled around him. She steadied herself in a shaky voice. She began, switching to Igbo instinctively to match the gravity of tradition. Obina, Nai, a father. I don't know what to say. Her words got in her throat. A part of her wanted to unleash her anger at him for all to hear. But looking at the casket, she saw the man she loved. The man who, for better or for worse, had been her partner. Her voice softened, full of sorrow. I loved you, Obim. We are not perfect, but I never thought I would be standing here like this so soon, with so many unanswered questions. Tears rolled down her cheeks. You have left me in a very difficult position. But I'll try to forgive you. I know you must have struggled with your secrets and fears. I just wish you had trusted us all with the truth while you lived. She glanced over at Ijoma and the girls, then at her own little ones clinging to Ngozi at the side. Her heart broke for all of them. Switching to English, so that everyone, including the younger ones, could understand, Ada continued softly. Obi, I promise to take care of all your children as best as I can, alongside their mother. She nodded gently toward Ijoma, acknowledging her for the first time in words. Your family will remain one in God's eyes. We will not let what you have done destroy us completely. She wasn't sure where that declaration came from, but in that moment, she felt it deeply. A hush fell. Even Ijoma looked at her with a complex expression, perhaps a glimmer of gratitude or simply surprise. Ada's tears came freely now. Rest in peace, my husband, she whispered, voice trembling. May God forgive you, and may God help us forgive you too. It wasn't a poetic eulogy she once imagined giving him, but it was honest and from her soul. With that, she placed a small white rose on the coffin, one she had brought from Abuja, symbol of their early love when he used to gift her flowers, and stepped back. She nearly collapsed as well, but Ngozi hurried to support her. A murmur rippled. Some villagers nodded in approval at her measured words. Others simply looked on in pity at this entangled tragedy. The burial proceeded. The coffin was lowered into the ground behind the house, where generations of Waneris lay. Both Ijoma and Ada were guided to perform the symbolic handful of sand tossed onto the coffin as it lay in the earth. When Ada's turn came after Ijoma's, her hand shook so violently that the sympathetic priest helped her hold the sand steadily. It hit by the coffin lid with a soft spatter, final and irrevocable. The red soil of Anambra was then shoveled by the men, thudding dully until nothing of the coffin could be seen. Adobe, the eldest daughter, broke into fresh screams of "Papa, please come back," which nearly caused a chain reaction of wailing. For family, it was done. Obinna Nwaneri was laid to rest, and the living were left to sort out the wreckage of his making. As custom demanded, the extended family and friends reconvened in the compound for the outing and formal presentation of the bereaved family, followed by a modest reception. Large coolers of jollof rice and stewed meat were served, and soft drinks passed around. It was oddly festive for an occasion born of so much sorrow, but Nigerian funerals often double as reunions and community gatherings. Life soldiered on even as heart ached. Ada mostly stayed in a corner with her children and a few supportive friends, picking at her food. She could feel the occasional stare or hear the whisper of Unyozo, the other wife, as people discussed her presence. She kept her gaze lowered, focusing on feeding Nnamdi and Amara to avoid confrontation. On the other side of the courtyard, Ijeoma, just surrounded by her own family members who had come to stand by her. At one point, Ada saw one of Ijeoma's sisters gesturing angrily in her direction while talking to Ijeoma, likely bad-mouthing the intruder. Ijeoma put a hand on her sister's arm, perhaps calming her, but she avoided looking at Ada. The tension was thick even as polite formalities went on. Mama Nneka moved between both women like a tired referee, making sure both eat and tried to get them to rest. But rest would not come easy. Finally, as dusk approached and the crowd thinned out, the inevitable moment arrived. Ijeoma, flanked by two of her relatives, a cousin and her sister, walked deliberately toward Ada. Instinctively, Ngozi and the other friend by Ada's side straightened, as if ready to defend their widow. But Ada gently waved them down. She stood up to face Ijeoma, picking up Amara in her arms as a sort of shield and solace. Nnamdi, sensing something weighty clung to her skirt. For a long second, the two women simply looked at each other, face to face, without an audience of hundreds, only a few onlookers and family near enough to hear. In Ijeoma's eyes, Ada saw a storm of emotions, grief, yes, and anger, but also profound hurt and even a kind of compassion she hadn't expected. It was Ijeoma who found her voice first. "So," she said quietly, and the single word held a world of meaning. Ada swallowed. "Ijeoma, I'm sorry," she said softly, her eyes bleeding. "I didn't know about you, I swear it. I only found out days ago. The same day Obinna," her voice broke, "the same day he died." Ijeoma's sister hissed under her breath, unconvinced, but Ijeoma held up a hand to silence her. "How? How could you not know?" Ijeoma asked, her tone of accusatory, exactly, but genuinely perplexed. "You lived with him for years. You have these children, and you never suspected?" Ada felt tears forming again. "No, he lied to me. He told me he was single, and his family wasn't around. We even married in court. I thought it was real." She bit her lip. "It seems it wasn't fully legal if he was married to you first. I only learned the truth when I stumbled on evidence, and when one of your daughters called his phone by accident." A flicker of recognition crossed Ijeoma's face. "That night," she whispered. Adobe said a strange woman answered. Her eyes welled up. Oh God. Both women stood there, absorbing each other's agony. Their lives had intersected like a collision, leaving casualties all around. "Ijeoma," Ada said softly, shifting Amara on her hip as the little girl whimpered, sensing the unease. "I am truly sorry for what you went through. I cannot imagine how betrayed you feel. I feel it too." Her voice shook. "He broke both of us." At that, Ijeoma's hardened expression melted a fraction. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "He was a good liar, wasn't he?" she said, a bitter edge to her voice. "I never imagined. I never thought I wasn't enough or that our daughters weren't enough until his mother She trailed off, shaking her head as if to dispel the thought. Ada nodded empathetically. I pieced together from what he told me before it happened, that he was under pressure for his son. She lowered her eyes. I'm sorry if that caused you pain in your marriage. I never knew. He never even told me you existed, let alone that you only had daughters. If I had known. She broke off, realizing nothing she said could change what had happened. You would have left him? Ijoma finished the thought, raising an eyebrow. Truly? Ada met her gaze. Yes, I would have. I'm not, she inhaled. I didn't sign up to be a second wife, especially not in secret. Ijoma studied her for a moment, then sighed heavily. Perhaps you would have, perhaps not. Love makes us do foolish things. She looked down at Nnamdi, who was half hiding behind Ada's skirt, peering at the unfamiliar other mother. Ijoma's eyes softened just a little at the boy's resemblance to his father. He's beautiful, a beautiful child, she said quietly. Looks like Obinna when he was little. This is Nnamdi, Ada said gently, nudging him forward. She motioned to Amara, and this is Amara. Ijoma managed a sad smile at the little girl with big curious eyes sucking her thumb. She's precious. Her own daughter hovered a step behind, observing solemnly. Adobe, the 15-year-old, regarded her new half-siblings with a mix of intrigue and uncertainty. The younger girl, Oluchi, mostly looked confused and kept glancing up at her mother. Summoning courage, Ada addressed Ijoma's daughter softly, switching to a soothing tone he had used with any child. Hello, Adobe and Oluchi. I am Auntie Adeze. She almost said, I'm your father's friend, but stopped herself. What was she to them? The truth. I am also your father's wife. Was too strange to say. The girls nodded politely but didn't speak. They had cried so much, their eyes were puffy and voices slightly hoarse. Adobe managed a weak good evening ma in English, showcasing the respectful upbringing her mother had given her. It pained Ada to sense how much these girls had been through in a short time. Losing their father, discovering his betrayal, and now meeting new siblings and a sort of step-mother figure all in one. An awkward silence fell. Both wives knew there was so much to say, yet this was hardly the time or place to delve into the full confrontation. But a start had to be made. Ijoma broke the silence with a question that weighed heavily on her heart. Did he treat you well? It was almost a whisper. Perhaps she needed to know if Obinna had been a loving husband to Ada or just a user. Perhaps to gauge what sort of relationship had paralleled her own. Ada thought about it, tears slipping down as memory surfaced. He was just good to me. Until I found out. He was a loving father to our kids, a caring partner in everyday things. I had no idea. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, careful not to upset Amara, perched on her. I thought I had the ideal husband, she added bitterly, recalling an article she had once read about women discovering secret families. Everything that glitters is not gold indeed. Ijoma nodded, understanding. He was a good father to our girls too, not always around, but when he was, he doted on them. Her jaw clenched. Which makes this even harder to stomach. How he managed to give love in two places and lie in both. I asked myself the same, Ada said. But like you said, he was a good liar. He wanted to appear blameless to everyone. Maybe he thought he was protecting us all by hiding the truth. But he was really just protecting himself. Ijoma gave a meatless chuckle at that. Then a silence. Finally, she sighed. I don't know what happens next, she admitted. This is not something I ever expected to deal with in my lifetime. 2 wives, 2 families. She glanced around at the near empty compound. Only a few people milled about now, giving the wives space. Dusk had settled, and oil lamps and a generator-powered bulb or 2 cast long shadows. But I know one thing. I don't want our children to suffer more than they already have. They are siblings by blood. Perhaps one day they can even be friends. Hearing that, Ada felt a tiny spark of hope. I want that too, she said. She looked down at Nnamdi and motioned him gently. Namdi, greet your big sisters. The boy picked up at the two older girls. Good evening, he said in a small voice. He had been holding a little toy car, his security object, these past days, and now held it out shyly to Oluchi, the younger of the girls, as if to share. Oluchi managed a slight smile and took the toy gently. Ada and Ijoma exchanged a warm, sorrowful glance at the innocent gesture. Children, unfettered by the burdens adults carry, sometimes find simple paths to connection. I will do my best to take care of these two, Ijoma said, nodding at Ada's kids. When they are here, I'm sure you will do the same for my girls when they are with you. It was a tentative olive branch, the suggestion that despite the orthodox situation, the families could perhaps commingle in the future, at least for the children's sake. Ada, relief and gratitude. Yes, I promise. They have lost their father. They shouldn't lose family too. Ijoma's sister looked between them and shook her head, but not with anger now, rather disbelief at how civil this was. She muttered, May God heal all of us, and wiped a tear. With that, Ijoma gently reached out and touched Ada's arm. The briefest, assuring squeeze. It was the first physical contact between them, and it spoke volumes of solidarity in pain, of a tentative partnership forged in tragedy. We will talk more tomorrow, she said softly. Mama wants us all to meet with the elders and iron out formalities. She meant things like inheritance and living arrangements. Ada knew, not an easy conversation, but one step at a time. All right, Ada agreed. Tomorrow. As Ijoma turned to go, leading her girls back into the house, little Oluchi looked back over her shoulder at Nnamdi and waved the toy car. Nnamdi gave a tiny wave in return. Ada felt a lump in her throat at that simple, sweet interaction. In the gloom of this heartbreak, perhaps a ray of light. The children might accept each other more easily than anyone, and if they could, then maybe the mothers could follow. Ada exhaled a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Ngozi came to her side, putting an arm around her. Are you alright? She asked quietly. Ada nodded, wiping her face. I think I will be. For the first time in many days, she meant it, even if only a little. The hardest parts were not over, but she had faced the other children not as an enemy, but as a mirror of her own suffering. In that mirror, she saw not hatred but understanding, and that made all the difference. That night, Ada and her children stayed in the Waneri's family compound at Mama Neka's insistence. They were given a small room to share. It was strange sleeping under the same roof as Ijoma and her daughters, but the home was big enough that they each had separate spaces. Through the thin walls, Ada could hear occasional muffled sobs from one side where likely Ijoma lay sleepless. On her own mat, with Amara curled at her chest and Nnamdi's little form at her back, Ada found sleep elusive too. She stared into the dark, listening to the rhythm of her children's breathing. Her mind drifted back over the whirlwind of the past week. It felt like a lifetime. Just days ago, she was an unsuspecting wife, excitedly making dinner, and now she was, what exactly, a widow, a second wife, a cautionary tale, perhaps all. Yet, also a mother, a daughter-in-law, and unexpectedly, a sort of friend to the woman she once feared confronting. Life was unpredictable in its complexity. She thought of an Igbo saying her father used to quote, "This is not the way to wear the orji kola nut on the ankle," meaning this is not the proper way of doing things. Indeed, none of this was proper by societal norms, but within the improper mess, they had to find a way to go on. Ada closed her eyes and whispered a prayer for strength. Strength for herself, for Ijoma, and all the children. She prayed for Obina's soul too, that he might find peace. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, she thought, directing it to him, but I will try. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, or someday. The night offered no reply, just a gentle breeze through the open window carrying the distance of nocturnal incense. In that quiet, Ada felt something release. A letting go of the immediate anger, leaving a raw sadness and a fragile hope in its place. She draped an arm over Nnamdi and Amara, pulling them closer. They were her purpose now, along with those two girls down the hall. However, fate tied their feet together. She would do right by all four of them. Obina's legacy could either be a broken family or an expanded one, bound by resilience. The choice, in many ways, lay with her and Ijoma. With that thought as comfort, Ada finally drifted into a light sleep. The two worlds of her life no longer clashing as enemies, but tentatively orbiting around a common center, the love for family and the hope of healing. The next morning dawned cool and blue over the compound, roosters crowing in the distance. Ada woke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar room until the events of the previous day anchored her back to reality. Her children were still sleeping, curled up on either side of her, their innocent faces a balm to her soul. She carefully slid out from between them and stepped outside to get some air. In the courtyard, the atmosphere was calmer. The crowds had left. Only close family remained. A few aunties were already up, sweeping the yard and stoking a fire to heat water for the morning bath. The early sun cast long rays through mango tree, and for a second the compound looked peaceful, like any normal family home on any normal day. The illusion broke when Ada saw the fresh grave mound behind the house. A wreath lay atop it. In the morning light, she walked over slowly and stood at its edge. Obina lies there, she told herself, still trying to fully believe it. She squatted down, pressing her palm to the cool earth. "Good morning," she whispered. She imagined for a moment that he could hear. "Maybe now you see everything, Obi. Perhaps now he regretted his choices." Ada found that, surprisingly, she felt more pity for him today than anger. He must have been so very conflicted, living with lies that inevitably spiraled out of his control. As the research study had put it, the product of such arrangements end up in crisis when the captain of the family dies. How true that was. The crisis was here, and he wasn't around to steer through it. It was left to the living to salvage what remained. Ada sighed and rose, brushing dirt from her wrapper. When she turned, she saw she was not alone. Perched on a low stool nearby was Mama Nneka, watching her silently. The old woman had a faraway look, a half-tied scarf over her hair. "Good morning, Mama," Ada greeted respectfully, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "Good morning, my daughter," Mama replied, voice hoarse from yesterday's cries. She motioned for Ada to come sit by her on the wooden bench. Ada obeyed, and the two women sat in companionable silence for a moment, listening to the cracking of firewood and birds trilling in the trees. Finally, Mama spoke softly. "Thank you for how you handled things yesterday. It could have been much worse." She gave Ada a tired smile. "I saw how you and Ijoma spoke calmly. It did my heart some good amid all the pain." Ada managed a faint smile in return. "Mama, I couldn't do otherwise. We are both hurt. Fighting each other would only hurt the children more." Mama Nneka nodded approvingly. She reached out and took Ada's hand, patting it. It struck Ada that this woman had now lost her husband. Years ago, Papa Waneli had passed, she knew, and her son, and yet she still had the grace to comfort her daughter-in-law. Perhaps this tragedy was teaching all of them depth of empathy they never knew they had. "I want you to know," Mama began, "I never wished for any of this. All I ever wanted was for my son to be happy and for our family name to continue." Her voice quivered. "Yes, I pressured him about a male child. I see now the result of that pressure. If I haven't, maybe he wouldn't have." He trailed off, covering her face with her free hand as guilt trembled her. Ada squeezed her hand. This was new, seeing the strong matriarch laid low by regret. "Mama, it's not your fault," she said gently. "Obina made his choices. Perhaps your words influenced him, but in the end, it was his decision to lie and deceive." She tried to sound soothing, though inside she herself harbored some blame towards his cultural obsession. with male heirs, but laying it on Mama wouldn't help now. Mama neck has sniffled, wiping her nose. Still, I regret it. I should have told him a good woman is worth more than 10 sons. But our people, we sometimes have stubbornness about these things. She gave a humorous chuckle. Old dogs and new tricks, hmm? Ada leaned her head on the older woman's shoulder in a spontaneous gesture of comfort. We all have our faults, Mama. They sat like that, two widows of different generations, bound by love for the same man's memory. After a while, Mama straightened up, business returning to her tone. Today, the Omuna elders will come by midday. We need to settle things, properties, living arrangements, and so forth. She sighed. Usually, the widow would speak for our children's interest, but here we have two widows. It could get tricky, but I will ensure fairness. Ada felt a ripple of anxiety. She had not even thought of material matters yet, her mind too full with emotional ones. But indeed, there was the house in Abuja, rented, owned. Actually, she wasn't sure. Obina had handled those things. She feared discovering it was rented or under some relative's name. The car, bank account, perhaps a small property in the village. Usually the first son, if of age, might be the primary heir in Igbo custom, or lacking that, the family collectively decides. But here, the first son was a 7-year-old from the second wife. The first wife had no sons, only daughters, who traditionally might be sidelined from inheriting in some Igbo customs. It was a potential minefield. Mama, what do you think will happen? Ada asked hesitantly. Mama pursed her lips. Your father-in-law's land and this house are family property. Those remain intact. Obina's personal house in Enugu town was in Ijoma's name along with him. I would suggest she keeps that to raise her girls. The house in Abuja, she paused. I believe he registered it under a company. We will have to see. But whether rented or owned, you and the children will remain there, at least until Nnamdi is grown. That is what Obina would have wanted, I am sure, and I won't have my grandson uprooted. Ada felt tears of gratitude. Mama was essentially vowing to protect her shelter. Some widows aren't so lucky. She had heard stories of women chased out by in-laws after the husband's death, especially if considered an interloper. But here, Mama was drawing the line for fairness. As for money, Mama continued, we'll split whatever is found. The girls will need funds for schooling. Adobe will be heading to university soon. Your little ones will also need support growing up. She shook her head sadly. He should have made a will, but men never think death will come young. Ada recalled the article, noting how secret children popping up and freeze assets. Indeed, Obina's work benefit might now be contested. It might require both wives signing or legal involvement. It could get messy, but she prayed it wouldn't develop into an ugly fight. Given how she and Ijoma had spoken, she hoped they could keep it amicable. As if conjoined by thought, Ijoma emerged from the house, looking drawn but composed. She had a simple blouse and wrapper on, and her hair was tied back. She saw the two on the bench and approached slowly. Mama, good morning, ma. She greeted, then turned to Ada with a hesitant smile. Good morning. Good morning, my dear. Mama Neka replied kindly, patting the bench for her to sit on the other side. Ijoma did, so that Mama sat between her two daughter-in-law, each holding one of her hands now. It was a poignant little form of unity. They exchanged small talk about whether the kids slept and if the food was okay. Polite, careful. Then Ijoma looked at Mama, then Ada. I was thinking, she said quietly, that after the meeting with the elders, I would like Adeze and the children to come visit my home in town, just to see, and maybe for the kids to spend time together before she returns to Abuja. Ada was a bit taken aback by the invitation coming so soon, but also appreciative. That would be nice, she replied gently. If it's okay with you, truly. Ijoma nodded. It might be awkward, but I think it's necessary. The sooner we normalize this new reality, the better for all. She managed a sad smile. I don't want us to feel like enemies in each other's presence. We have to be partners now, in a strange way, to raise these children. Mama Neka squeezed both their hands, visibly pleased. This is all I prayed for, she said emotionally. That peace will reign among you. We are together, stronger forever. Ada recognized the proverb. Multitude is strength. Ironically, apt. The multitude of their extended family could either be their strength or their downfall, depending on unity. She silently vowed it would be the former. The elder council meeting was as civil as could be hoped. A handful of grey-haired uncles and aunties sat with Mama and the two wives in the parlor. They went through the list of assets. There was much thought-sorting over the complications, but with Mama's firm guidance and both wives calmly agreeing on split, an arrangement was reached. Essentially, they would not divide things by wife, but by children. All four kids would share equally in their father's estate. Practically, that meant Ijoma would hold the older girls' shares in trust and Ada for the younger ones. For jointly used properties, the assigned usage, Ijoma kept the Enugu house, Ada the Abuja residence. No one contested this because it was logical. Each stayed where they already lived. Money in accounts would be halved between the two nuclear families. One uncle grumbled that traditionally daughters shouldn't inherit much, while another elder retorted that those were modern times and all children must be cared for. In fact, one of the Umada women pointed out pointedly that if they tried to cheat the girls, it could cause strife and was against even updated Igbo customs that now consider female children too. Ada felt grateful for her voice. The grumbling uncle was silenced by a few sharp looks. Times had changed. To seal the agreement, they wrote it out and all parties signed, both wives, Mama and two elders as witnesses. It was informal, but symbolically important. Ada could almost feel Obina's spirit sigh in relief that at least this one brow was averted. Perhaps he hadn't been as wealthy or important as those infamous big men whose passing leads to headline-making battles, but still, this quiet pact felt like a victory of sanity over greed or resentment. After the meeting, as people dispersed for a lunch break, Ada caught up with Ijoma in the hallway. "Thank you for being fair," she said sincerely. "I know it must be hard." Ijoma gave her a tired but genuine smile. "It's hard, but fairness to the children isn't something I would ever compromise. They are siblings. They deserve equal treatment." She paused, then added, "And fairness to you as well, Adeze. You are wronged as much as I was. Perhaps in different ways, but pain is pain. I wouldn't add to yours by fighting over material things." Those words cemented for Ada that a foundation of respect and even care was forming between them. It was strange and bittersweet, bonding with your husband's other wife over his grave, but life can forge unlikely alliances in its furnace of trials. That afternoon, as planned, Ada and her children went with Ijoma and her girls to the house in Enugu town. It was a modest but well-kept bungalow in a residential neighborhood of Enugu. Inside, traces of Obina were everywhere. His books on a shelf, a set of golf clubs in a corner. He played occasionally, apparently. Family photos on the wall. Ada took them in with a mix of sorrow and curiosity. In some pictures, he was much younger, holding a newborn Adobe, beaming with pride. In others, slightly older, with both girls on his knees. Then, there were some more recent ones. He looked as he did when leaving home for business trips. Only here, he was at a school event with Ijoma and the girls, or at a cousin's wedding. A whole life she knew nothing about, frozen in these frames. Meanwhile, she noted her own family's photos were absent. Clearly, he kept any evidence of them back in Abuja. That realization made her stomach clench, how he had compartmentalized so fully. But she focused on the now. The children were the bridge, true of kids' resilient nature. By mid-afternoon, the four siblings were sitting together on a rug, playing a Ludo board game that one of the aunties had fished out. Adobe, the eldest, was explaining rules to Nnamdi patiently, while Amara and Oluchi giggled at how the dice rolled. Watching them interact warmed both mothers' hearts. It was as if, for that hour, they could forget the tragedy and simply be children at play, cousins or siblings without the heavy labels. Ada and Ijoma sat on the couch sipping malt drinks and sharing small stories, cautiously at first, then more openly. They spoke of the children's personalities, their likes and dislikes. They discovered with some laughter that both sets of kids were fans of the same cartoon show on African Magic. Both had been promised by Obina a trip to Disney World someday that now might never happen. They laughed and cried in the same breath at that. They moved on to share little squares of Obina that each knew. He always snored lightly after a heavy meal, Ada offered chuckily. Oh yes, Ijoma smiled, especially after pounded yam. I used to poke him to turn over and he would mumble, and I'm awake, I'm awake. Even in his sleep, they both laughed. Ada twirled her drink can, then said quietly, he told me his favorite meal was fried plantains and eggs. I would make it every Saturday morning. Was that true or just something he told me? Ijoma's eyes widened. He told me yam porridge was his favorite, and I often made that. They looked at each other, and despite the solemn topic, shared a laugh. The man had too many favorites, Ada sighed. Or maybe he just loved all food. Likely, Ijoma agreed. A thoughtful silence followed. Then she spoke. He lied in so many things, but I do believe he loved all his children. In that, at least, he was genuine. She glanced at the kids. No father does that much without love. Ada nodded. She had no doubt Obina loved their son and daughter. And seeing him in those photos with the older girls, she could tell he cherished them too. It was a small consolation for all his mistakes. He hadn't been cold-hearted, just fearfully selfish. As evening approached, Ada prepared to return to the village house for the night. He planned to stay one more day to finalize some paperwork before heading back to Abuja. At the door, the two women embraced for the first time, a hug of solidarity. Take care of yourself, Ijoma, Ada said sincerely. You will talk often, yes? I would like to keep in touch. The kids, maybe they can exchange letters or calls until we meet again. Yes, Ijoma agreed. We will call. And you take care too. Be strong. She looked at the children, bundling into the car. We have a long road ahead, Adeze, but I think we will be alright. Ada smiled softly. I think so too. It was outstanding to say it and mean it. A few days ago, she had thought their life was ruined. Now, while still grieving and processing, she saw a path forward. Unconventional, yes, but filled with support. From this new sister of sorts, from her steadfast friends like Ngozi, and from a surprising wise mother-in-law. She even felt her community back in Abuja would rally around her once she returned, church and neighbors stepping in to help a young widow. Nigeria is hard on widows sometimes, but also remarkably compassionate in the same breath. That night, the last in Anambra, Ada wrote in a journal she had found in her handbag. She penned down the whirlwind of events, wanting to capture lessons learned. She wrote about trust and betrayal, about the strength of women in the face of cultural pressures, about how two wives turned their pain into partnership rather than enmity. She cited, in her own words, the irony that had struck her, how common such hidden stories were in society, stories only revealed in obituaries and courtrooms, and how she and Ijoma had determined not to become another sensational field, but a story of reconciliation. She even jotted an apt proverb she recalled. When two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. They refuse to be elephants, trampling their children. The grass here would be the kids' well-being. Instead, they choose to be, perhaps, elephants that mourn together, finding solace in each other's company. Before bed, she took a moment at Obina's grave again. In the quiet dark, the stars were brilliant ahead, and a soft breeze carried the scent of night-blooming flowers Ada have expected to feel anger welling up again. After all, he was directly responsible for this chaotic chapter of her life. But her heart, though heavy, was calm. She knelt and touched the earth, speaking softly. I won't say I have forgiven you completely, Obina, she murmured, but I promise I'll be okay. Both your wives will be okay. We have made sure your children will be okay too. Her voice cut a bit. You caused us so much pain, but we'll heal. In some strange way, you have given me another family. People who understand exactly what I feel. I think maybe you might even have known we would be good for each other. Two strong Igbo women who loved you. I wish you had trusted us enough to bring us together in life. But here we are, together now anyway. She managed a small smile, tears glistening. Rest well and don't worry, we'll carry on. A gentle night breeze rustled the leaves above, as if in answer. Ada took it as a sign of peace. She stood, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. Grief isn't vanquished in a week. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. She and Ijoma would surely have moments of strain or resurfacing resentment. The kids would have lots of questions about their father as they grew, but she felt equipped now to handle it, one day at a time, with honesty and love. Back in Abuja in a week later, Adeze stepped into her house, now her house alone, with a mix of resolve. The familiar scent of home greeted her, yet Obina's absence was palpable. His slippers lay by the door, where he last left them. A half-read newspaper still on the side table. Ada felt a pang, but also a sense of ownership. This was her space now to redefine. Her children reached in ahead of her, happy to be home. Mama, can we visit Auntie Joma and her sisters at Christmas? Namde asked unexpectedly that evening as Ada tucked him into bed. The trip had clearly left an impression. Ada smoothed his hair. We will see what we can arrange, she said gently. Would you like that? He nodded. Yes, Adobe said she would teach me more board games, and Oluchi wants to play with Amara. Ada smiled. Okay, we'll keep in touch with them. Maybe they can even come here to visit someday. His face lit up at that idea. After the kid fell asleep, Ada sat at the dining table, a cup of tea in hand. She opened her journal to continue writing, a habit she decided to keep as a new habit. She titled the entry New Beginnings. In neat handwriting, she wrote about returning home and her plans to resume her work. She had a small fashion business she ran from home. She had put it on a pause during the funeral for clients who were waiting. Plans to join a widow support group at church, which the pastor's wife had recommended when she called to check on Ada. Plans to raise her son and daughter with pride in their heritage, but also with more open-minded views, so that her son would never think of hurting women the way his father did, and her daughter would never accept less than honesty from a partner. She also wrote about staying connected to Ijoma. They had spoken on the phone that very afternoon. Ijoma called to ask if they got back safely. The conversation was brief but warm, each genuinely interested in how the other was coping. They agreed to exchange weekly updates, no matter how short, just to ensure neither felt alone in this. It was friendship born of shared wounds, or perhaps those are among the strongest. And as pen hovered and she tried to articulate her feelings, finally she wrote, out of a nightmare, we have forged a kind of dream. One where two families became one, not by traditional definition, but by a bond of understanding. In a society where a man's duplicity is often a scandal, we quietly choose to make it a lesson in compassion. She underlined that last phrase, thinking how even the village folks ended up remarking how graciously the situation was handled. One of the Omada had told her on departure, my dear, you people ended up behaving like humans, which was her way of saying they acted with decency despite the odds. That comment had made Ada smile. Before heading to bed, Ada did one more thing. She carefully removed Obina's slippers from the doorway and placed them in a closet. She rearranged the living room slightly, taking down the large framed wedding photo of them on the wall and replacing it with a collage of photos of her kids. It wasn't out of spite. She wrapped the wedding photo gently and stored it, but it felt right to refresh the space to be more of hers. She left a few pictures of him and the kids around, and one of him smiling solo on a shelf. His presence wasn't erased, just rebalanced. As she made these small changes, she hummed a tune. It was an old Igbo lullaby her mother used to sing. In translation, the words went something like, "After the rain, the sun will shine. After the dark, the morning comes." Humming it now, Ada felt its truth. She had been through a storm darker than she ever imagined, but morning was indeed breaking through. Not a perfect bright morning, but a gentle dawn of hope. In her heart, she carried gratitude and sorrow. Gratitude for her children's smiles, for newfound sisterhood with a woman she might have wrongly hated, for the support of family and community, and for the inner strength she never knew she possessed until tragedy tested her. Ada thought of all the women in similar situations, those cautionary tales she had learned or read about. Many of those ended bitterly, with families torn apart. She felt determined to ensure her story and Ijoma's would be remembered differently, as a story not of a man's betrayal, but of two women's triumph over it. The ringing of her phone jolted her from thought. It was a video call from Ijoma. Smiling, Ada answered. On the screen appeared Ijoma with Adobe and Oluchi squeezing in, all waving. Ada quickly fetched Nnamdi and Amara from their room, still half awake but excited to see familiar faces. The two households chatted joyfully for a few minutes, the kids showing drawings they made, the mothers exchanging quick notes about how someone wouldn't eat dinner and someone else scraped a nail playing. It was astonishing how ordinary the exchange was, like old friends. As they said goodnight, Ijoma blew a kiss to the children and said to Ada, "Kachifo, good night." Ada responded, "Good night, my sister." The word sister came naturally, and she saw Ijoma's eyes light up in acknowledgement before the call ended. After putting the kids back to sleep, Ada felt content. She curled up on her bed, finally at peace, enough to get a full night's rest. The last thought that drifted through her mind before sleep claimed her was an image. She and Ijoma, years from now, sitting together at a graduation, perhaps Adobe's, then later Nnamdi's, cheering on each other's children, side by side, like true family. Perhaps people there might whisper curiously about their connection, and someone would explain, they were both wives of the same man. Maybe some would shake their heads in pity or confusion, but those who really knew the story would instead say, look how gracefully they handled it. Look at the beautiful family they made out of a painful situation. And that, at that thought with a smile, would be a legacy far more meaningful than any her husband had left. A legacy of unity, strength, and forgiveness that their children and community would learn from. It was, in the end, a meaningful resolution to a chapter of secret and sorrow. A resolution written not by fate, but by the courage and heart of two women determined to heal their family. With that comforting thought, Adeze drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, ready to embrace the new path that lay ahead, one day at a time. That a marriage built on lies and secrecy cannot stand. Truth always comes to light. Deceit not only destroys trust, but also leaves scars on innocent lives, especially the children. Love and family can only thrive on honesty and openness, and no amount of wealth, status, or pretense can replace the peace that comes from living truthfully. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Ada and her family on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with her journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V. And do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.